Hey guys, welcome back to Anime Gossips. This is my recap for the anime The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. The story begins with two popular kids at school walking in the hallways, while everyone gossips about them as they make a great couple together. These two students, who are already the center of attention in the school, walk past the class corridor, discussing how to amend the school rules and regulations, as well as how to fulfill their promise to the student body. Both of them are executives in the student council. Suzunei is the president, while Kazuki is the vice president of the student council. Then we see Uusato, an ordinary and forgetful high school student. Uusato always hopes in his heart for an extraordinary and fantastical life. Now, it's raining outside after the school has closed. It is expected that every student leaves for their home. He goes to pick up his umbrella and prepares to go home, but he can't find his umbrella right there. This shocks him because he knows someone must have taken it, and that's bad luck for him. He spots an umbrella that does not belong to him and resists taking it to avoid any form of trouble for himself. He sits down distressfully beside the umbrella, thinking that if only he could use magic. Uusato checks the time and wishes to leave for his residence, but he can't due to the heavy rain, so he has no choice but to wait until the rain stops. Soon after, he gets tired as the rain is not stopping. He shouts loudly out of frustration. Suzunei hears his voice and asks him what he is doing there. She asks if he doesn't have an umbrella, as all students are required to leave soon. Uusato becomes frightened and sets to leave for home immediately, but Suzunei stops him, as sending a student home in the rain would damage the student council's dignity. In the middle of their discussion, the vice president, Kazuki, interrupts and volunteers to lend Uusato his spare umbrella, shocking Uusato. Suzunei asks Kazuki if he knows him, and he reveals that they are classmates. Some thoughts run through Usato's mind because both of them have never communicated in class, but Kazuki knows his name. Well, he concludes that Kazuki must be a nice guy. Kazuki brings out a short umbrella and offers it to Uusato. He takes it and thanks him for the favor. Kazuki was confused about whether to call him Uusato or Ken. Then Uusato told him it would be nice if he calls him Uusato. This discussion was held while the three of them were set to leave for home. Suzunei stands in between the guys, and she determines to also call him Uusato. Uusato thinks about the fact that he is being walked home by the two most popular kids at school. While they are having their walk home, Uusato tells Kazuki that he doesn't expect him to be as friendly as he is, because he has only seen him talking to the girls in their class. Kazuki says he usually engages with the girls because they start a conversation with him. Uusato shares his thoughts about Suzunei. He thinks she is less approachable, but Suzunei made it clear that she's just an ordinary third-year student. Kazuki tells her she is not ordinary, as she is intelligent, has a good heart, and is beautiful. Uusato was bothered about their relationship, and he asks them if they are dating, as everyone at school talks about it. Kazuki explains that they are not dating, and Suzunei says they only spend a lot of time together because of their official duty in the student council. Uusato happens to be the first to ask them directly if they are dating. Many people in the school think they are dating, but they could not ask them directly. Instead, they spread fake news. So, Suzunei compliments him for that. As they move further, Suzunei asks Uusato what he will be doing after school, but Uusato makes it clear that he has not yet thought about it. Suzunei has also asked this same question to Kazuki, as she is curious about other people's plans because she doesn't have plans for herself. She has not found what she wants to do because of her ability to instantly complete any goal she sets for herself. She sometimes feels like she doesn't belong to that world. Suzunei and Uusato are nothing alike, but Uusato understands the feelings Suzunei has. Suddenly, Kazuki and Suzunei start hearing some strange sound, similar to a bell ringing, but Uusato could not hear the sound. It becomes louder and louder. After some time, a magical circle appears around them. Uusato knows it's a gate to another world. Suzunei asks if they will find magic, monsters, and heroes in that world. After some time, the three of them are transported, and they find themselves in an unknown palace with a king and guards. Kazuki wakes worried about others, but Suzunei's expression shows that she's very happy to be in an isekai world. The king tells them that suddenly coming there has made them confused, but Kazuki boldly inquires about the identity of the man. The king understands their confusion, so he pleads with them to hear him out. He introduces himself officially. His name is Lloyd Volgast Linger, King of Linger. He explains that the three are being summoned to the Linger Kingdom to serve as heroes. Kazuki is shocked, but Suzunei is so excited while Uusato is frightened. The king explains that 2 years ago, they were attacked by the demon king of that world. The demon lord invaded the land with his army and they managed to drive him off. But the demon lord's army has been expanding its power. They could not predict the next move of the demon lord, so as a last resort, they summoned an accomplished individual from another world who can confront the demon lord by using a forbidden ritual known as hero summoning. After the long explanation, Suzunei is excited, but Kazuki stands and confronts the king, saying that they summoned them without their consent. He requests that they send them back to their world immediately. The king tells him that sending them back won't be possible because the ritual only works in one direction. Kazuki becomes more furious. He explains that he has family back in his world, and so do his two companions, but the king feels sorry and tells him they are desperate. Kazuki steps forward for a fight, but they are surrounded by guards holding spears in their hands. The king moves close to them and bows before them. He promises to find a way to send them back to their world, but before that, they will have to help them, and he addresses them as heroes. Suzunei asks the reason they are being addressed as heroes. The king calls on his magician, Welsi, who explains that the hero summoning magic circle is designed to select accomplished individuals. Welsi asks if they heard the bell ringing when they were summoned. That sound indicates that they are heroes. Kazuki remembers vividly that Uusato did not hear the sound. Welsi takes them to a room to measure their magical abilities with a crystal ball. Suzunei is just happy seeing things like that. Kazuki worries about Uusato, but Welsi assures him that he should be able to use magic even though he is not a hero, but that's not Kazuki's concern. He thinks Uusato should be angry that he is forced and caught up in the magic circle, but Uusato tells him that he is not angry because he figures out that he might find something to do. Kazuki compliments him for being amazing, but Uusato is sure that Suzunei is way more amazing than himself, and Kazuki agrees with him. Welsi starts the measuring and asks Suzunei to place her hand on the crystal ball. She joyfully places her hand, and the crystal ball changes its color. The color indicates an affinity for thunder magic, and she also has ample mana, which makes her more excited. Next is Kazuki. He places his hand on the crystal ball, and it changes to a light color, which represents light magic. He requests to know its usefulness, and then Suzunei explains that he will use it to launch laser beams or swords made of light. Welsi explains more about the magic, saying only a few people could use light magic. Light dispels evils against demons, and its power is unparalleled. Next is Uusato. Before he places his hand, he wonders if he has any magical power. If the result is positive, then he wishes to help his companions with it. As soon as he places his hand on the crystal ball, it changes its color. It's pretty like an emerald, a soothing color. The magician did not say anything, but rather she drags him out of the room to show him to the king. She gets to the king and explains that the other two heroes have great abilities, but she is there for something more important. The king thought Uusato has an affinity for dark magic, but Welsi revealed that the crystal ball turned green. All guards, including the king, are shocked. The king orders that they must send him away from the castle as quickly as possible. Uusato thought he was dangerous, so he kept on questioning them. But no one gave him an answer. He asks if there's someone else who possesses the same affinity, and the king says yes. Right after the king answered the question, a lady named Rose, who possesses the same affinity as him, arrives. She is the captain of the kingdom's rescue team. She comes in asking about how the hero summoning goes. King Lloyd could not speak up. He thought Rose would be taking a break, but she claims that she serves the king, so she doesn't need to take a break. Rose moves close to Uusato and asks him if he's a hero. Uusato becomes scared. The king cuts in and introduces him as a boy brought into the palace by their mistake. Rose asks Uusato his name, and they both exchange greetings, even though Uusato is fearful. Welsi leads Rose to the room where the heroes are. The king prepares a room for Uusato to rest while he thinks about what he'll do with him later. Uusato asks the king about his magic that made people unsettled, and mentions what kind of magic is the green color. Rose is still in that palace and asks Uusato again to confirm what he just said. She requests the king if she can take Uusato with her, but the king disagrees. The king orders Welsi to take Uusato away from her. Welsi uses some kind of water magic to quickly get him out of there, but Rose catches up with him and takes him away, promising that she will turn the boy into a full-fledged healing magic user. Welsi goes on to explain the whole situation to his companions, telling them that he is being taken away by the kingdom's rescue team. She informs them about Usato's affinity, which happens to be healing magic, a rare magic affinity that made Rose, the captain of the kingdom's rescue team, take him away to train and turn him into her subordinate. Suzunei doesn't find any problem with that, but Welsi finds a problem in it, because Rose's training methods are unorthodox. Rose took Uusato to her base. She told him about her affinity and also mentioned that he would be joining the rescue team, becoming her subordinate. Rose summons her boys, and they enter in a terrifying manner. Rose introduces Uusato to them, and they all welcome him, but in a way that scares him. They then introduce themselves. These individuals are subordinates of Rose, but they are not healing magic users. There are two other healing magic users in the rescue team, but they work somewhere else. She asks Uusato to get prepared for training starting from the next day. Usato doesn't want to get involved with her, but he has no choice. At first, Usato cannot sleep as he contemplates what's going to happen to him. However, we see Rose thinking about the fact that there's a healing magic user from another world. The next morning, Usato wakes up and thinks over and over again about his existence in another world. His friends Suzunei and Kazuki come to visit him. They are very worried about him since they has been abducted. Usato explains to his friends about the training he is starting that day, referring to it as hell and stating that he has no choice. He is also interested in being of some use. His friend's training also starts that day. Suzunei encourages the others to do their best, and Kazuki thanks Usato, promising to do his best as well. Usato thinks about his friend's feelings about the world, then hopes to grow strong enough someday to support them. Rose comes out of the house after the heroes left. Usato becomes frightened, answering every single question of Rose in fear and trembling. Rose tells him he is free to see whoever he wishes when he is not training. She gives Usato a journal where he can record his daily training regimen and how he feels about it. Usato starts his training that day immediately after having breakfast. On day 1 of the training, Usato finds it easy, not like how Tong and other boys told him it would be hell. That day, he only focuses on sensing his mana. Rose tells him to work on drawing the mana out of his body. Next, he is given a book to read and understand. Usato is shocked that he can understand the language of the book. Rose also tells him he can understand it because the summoned heroes automatically have translation magic cast on them. Eventually, he opens it and is able to read the language of the book. The book contains the Linger Kingdom map, demon territories, and the history of nations, different races, and demons of that world. That day, Usato thinks he can handle the training if it only consists of the activities of that day. On the second day of training, Usato runs a lot, the same as on the third day of training. He is forced to run until his muscles are so sore that he can't move again. Rose scolds him for stopping, and the scolding makes him aware of the magic power she possesses. She heals his sore muscles and tells him to get back to running. On the 4th day, Usato started training with the other members but was left behind. On the 5th and 6th days of training, Usato still keeps running. He runs all day. On the 6th day, he falls to the ground. While on the ground, the light of the healing magic shows up in his hand. On the 7th, 8th, and 9th days, the training becomes harder. Rose kicks him and forces him to run restlessly. On the 9th day, Usato questions the need for healing light. There, he discovers that his healing magic can make him strong effectively. On the 10th day, he is now able to manifest healing magic on demand. He doesn't get tired no matter how much he runs. Usato becomes uneasy because all his training regime is to run around, and he is worried if he will be able to help Suzunei and Kazuki. The next day, the training regime changes. He does push-ups as much as possible, and whenever he gets tired, he uses his healing magic to revive himself, then he gets strong again. Rose lets him understand the reason he needs to train his body like that, and that's because he needs to run from the enemy as quickly as possible in battle, and also, he can be able to save his injured allies. That day, Usato is happy because he finishes the training without getting scolded too much. On day 12, Usato ran until the afternoon and then did push-ups until the night. Usato feels lighter as he does training every day. On the 13th day of training, Rose adds weights to the run. It becomes really heavy for him, but he has no choice. On the 14th day, Usato's lunch goes missing. He requests his lunch and finds out that Tong ate it. He becomes angry and chases Tong all day. That day he gets used to the weight because he chases him with the heavy stone bag on him. A week later, Kazuki and Suzunei visit him. They are escorted by the Princess of the Kingdom, Princess Celia, and some royal guards. Upon arrival, they find something strange. Usato is forced by Rose to do push-ups with a heavy rock on his back. Rose later adds one more heavy rock to the one on Usato's back. Rose is impressed, seeing that Usato is making use of his healing magic to revive himself. Rose reveals that Usato has finally grown strong to become her kind of man, and he will surely be her right-hand man. Kazuki finds the training brutal, while Suzunei is impressed by Usato's muscles that are rapidly growing. Captain Siglis is annoyed. He grabs Rose and complains that she is destroying Usato's future. Rose disagrees with the accusation and claims that she has her own way of doing things. Rose discusses some interesting things about Usato that she likes. After the discussion, Rose allows him to take a break from training to get some lunch and also to attend to his visitors. Captain Siglis sends Usato, Suzunei, and Kazuki with Princess Celia from there and waits behind to have some words with Rose. Firstly, the lads discuss Captain Siglis, who happens to be the strongest knight in the Linger Kingdom. He is the one teaching Suzunei and Kazuki how to use a sword. Then they move on to exchanging pleasantries. Princess Celia introduces herself and tells Usato to act formal, just exactly the way Kazuki acted when he first met Princess Celia. The princess brought along with her a delicious cake, which they all ate together and enjoyed. While they eat, Kazuki wonders about the training Usato has been having every day, as they saw when they arrived. Uusato explains that the training was a little bit light that day. Kazuki explains their training regime. He found the training pretty difficult but reveals that Captain Siglis and Welly always considered their health and well-being while teaching them how to use magic and swords. Kazuki notices Usato's muscles and he is about to talk, but Suzunei is too straightforward and gets a quick peek at Usato's abs. Kazuki requests to know how Uusato felt about the training, and then Uusato explains his training regime. He reveals that he wanted to be useful, even though Rose is scary and brutal. In the beginning, he wanted to run away, but he is not interested in running away anymore. Uusato is starting to see the training as fun, and he didn't find life hard in that place. After hearing that, Suzunei is amazed by Uusato. Uusato tells them that someday they are going to fight as heroes, and he wants to help them by then. Suzunei gets happy and tells him she counts on him to come and save her if she is in trouble. The discussion is disrupted by Tong, who tells Uusato he brought lunch for him. Uusato makes a weird face and tells him it's not a favor and how shameless he has to be to bring his lunch. He runs towards him and they both fight restlessly. Everyone is shocked after seeing that. Kazuki says that it is part of his daily life in that place. Kazuki and others set to leave for the castle. Suzunei is able to understand that there's a reason the three of them were summoned to the world together. They need to do their best to be the heroes they are being called. Later that night, Uusato had his bath and began to have thoughts about the visit of Suzunei and Kazuki, especially the reaction of Suzunei when she saw his muscles. Uusato also checked his body and realized his body has really changed. He has been healing his body over and over after it was damaged by strenuous training. He is pleased to see the result of all his hard training, but he is worried about the mental fortitude to match his body, which he has built. The next day, Rose throws a luggage at Uusato and tells him that they are going out. Other members are amazed to hear it. Rose gets to the gate and tells Thomas, one of the gatekeepers, that she wants to show her subordinate to the outside world. The gate is opened, and Uusato is able to see the outside world. As they start their journey outside, Uusato questions Rose about the place they are going to, but Rose does not give him any answer. They reach the destination, the forest known as the Darkness of Linger. The forest is infamously teeming with monsters. Rose commands Uusato not to come back until he hunts down a grand grizzly. Uusato becomes frightened and tells Rose that a blue grizzly only turns into a grand grizzly after living 100 years. He refers to the book he has read previously, which states that a blue grizzly is dangerous, not to talk of a grand grizzly. Rose doesn't listen to his excuse. She believes that Uusato should be able to take down a grand grizzly with all the training he has undergone. She lifts up Uusato and throws him into the forest. Uusato begins to fall from the sky, and he is afraid he will surely not survive. He believes the newspaper will reveal the reason behind his demise at the hands of the captain of the rescue team. Just then, his body begins to glow with healing magic, and he braces for the impact. Uusato thanks God when he eventually makes it to the forest alive. As much as he would like to say it, he can only return once he complies with Rose's orders. Uusato describes how he envisions defeating a massive grizzly bear, stating that it is only 2 meters tall and should be easy for him to take down. But he is shocked when the big grizzly bear appears behind him and starts to pursue him. The massive grizzly bear is far bigger than he was taught, with enormous fangs and claws. But Uusato was so sure of his legs that he started running faster. Suddenly, the massive grizzly bear approached him, and Uusato recalled how he had survived that training session in the infernal hell. He starts to think that the grizzly bear is nothing compared to Rose. Uusato suddenly stops and turns to face the giant grizzly bear. But 2 more blue grizzly bears appeared to be pursuing him suddenly. He just kept running because he was so afraid. He hears a waterfall in front of him and leaps into it to escape. The grizzly bears returned since they could no longer pursue him. As night approached, he laid his clothes beneath a tree to dry and took food from his bag. While eating, Uusato thinks that he would never be able to defeat the enormous grizzly bear. After making a mark with his knife on the tree for the first day, he says he has made it through the day and sleeps in a pile of leaves. On the next day, he marks the tree with his knife once more and decides that he needs to learn more about his enemy. First, he needs to find out where the grand grizzly lives. He finds some scratch marks on a tree. Suddenly, a sound catches his attention, and he prepares to fight, believing the grizzly bear might be nearby, but it turns out it's merely a rabbit that has come out from the bushes. It's actually a monster that looks like a rabbit, and it has a wound on its leg. When Uusato noticed it was injured, he used his healing magic to treat the rabbit's wound and told it not to get hurt again. Uusato starts to look for the grizzly bears again, but the rabbit follows him. He tells it not to follow as he is looking for a really dangerous monster, so it will be in danger if it follows him. But the rabbit still keeps following him, so he asks if it knows where the grand grizzly is. Uusato starts to follow the little rabbit, and he finds where the bears leave. Uusato starts to monitor them without being discovered. He notices that they look like they're a family. Suddenly, he sees that the rabbit is in fear, and it seems to be because of a monster is approaching. Usato hears a noise in the darkness, and he is shocked when a giant snake appears. He thinks that he didn't read anything about the snake in the book. He is terrified by its appearance and knows it is dangerous, with blood oozing from every part of it. Usato takes great care to avoid going anywhere near that giant snake. 4 days have passed since Usato saw the enormous snake monster, and he still can't get rid of the uneasy feeling he is experiencing. Instead, he has been observing the grand grizzly bear, which has remained unchanged, making him feel good to watch. However, Usato can only leave by defeating the grand grizzly bear, so he decides to do so the following day. The next day, the rabbit started pulling Usato's shoe to keep him from leaving. He decided to stay there until the rain stopped and asked the rabbit if it is sufficient. When the rain stops, Usato plans to defeat the considerable grizzly bear that day while keeping an eye out for it. He is heading toward their cave when the rabbit hops on his shoulder. Usato informs the rabbit that he must defeat the bear to escape the forest because the bear couldn't stop him. Usato is shocked to discover that the giant grizzly bear has been eliminated when he arrives at its location. But he is also terrified that Rose will beat him for failing to complete his assignment. He notices the bite marks on the giant grizzly bear. It is clear that the snake monster did it, but it is obvious that it didn't do it to eat, it took their lives for fun. The cub emerges from the cave where it is hiding. The cub goes to its mother and tries to wake her up. When Usato sees the cub, he becomes quite emotional. Usato scolds himself, stealing his nerve for nothing as his prey has been taken from him. When Usato notices the cub crying loudly, he tells the cub to wait for him and vows to get revenge for it. Meanwhile, Kazuki and Suzunei go to look for Usato. They are told that he has been gone for about 10 days. Kazuki is afraid because that seems a bit long, but Tong says Rose makes all her own decisions. The subordinate then informs Kazuki and Suzunei that Rose has also left, and they have no idea why. Kazuki gets worked up when it comes to Usato. He is so worried about Usato that he asks Suzunei if she isn't worried about him. Suzunei honestly says she is not worried. If Rose is the one making him do this, then it is probably fine by her. Besides, she believes in Usato. Suzunei believes Usato will come back soon, and Kazuki believes in him too, so they both leave. Back in the forest, Usato is getting ready for revenge as he makes a spear with his knife. He eats his bread and drinks some water. He asks the rabbit to take him to the snake and tells the rabbit to show him the way and run away afterward. The rabbit begins to give directions of where to find the giant snake. Usato is suddenly startled to see the snake attempting to attack the cub. He sees how dangerous and terrifying the snake looks, but he knows nothing is scarier than Rose, so he attacks the giant monster snake and uses his sharp spear to stab one of its eyes. He intends to attack the giant monster snake from its one side, where it is blinded, but the giant monster snake bites him in the hand that he is holding the knife with. Usato starts healing his hand and stabs the snake inside its mouth. Usato's hand is freed from the snake's mouth, but he realizes that he has been poisoned. This is an unfair fight as the snake is both huge and poisonous. But after being ill with a stomachache from water, Usato learned how to heal himself from the inside out. Usato tries to attack the snake again, but the snake is prepared to attack him with a tail swing. But the bear cub steps in to help him. Usato jumps off from the cub's back and gets on top of the giant snake. He punches the snake on its head with a powerful punch, causing it to fall to the ground. He then stabs the snake's eye again with his sharp spear, and after struggling for some time, the snake is defeated. Usato can't believe that they defeated the giant snake and tells the cub that they got the revenge. Suddenly, the snake gets back up, but Usato can't even move an inch. The cub tries to help him out, but Usato tells it to run away. The snake prepares to attack him, and Usato remembers all the people in his life. He is angry that this entire situation is Rose's fault, and he yells out that she is a violent ogre. Just then, out of nowhere, Rose descends from the sky and stomps on the snake. Usato asks her why she is there, and Rose reveals that the rabbit named Kukuru told her. Kukuru is her pet, and she asks it to watch over Usato. Usato explains that the rabbit showed up injured, and he healed its injury. But Rose tells him that Kukuru is a sucker. Kukuru put on an act to gain his trust, and he just fell for it. She explains that she was nearby and prepared to act if something happened to Usato. Rose intended to interfere as little as possible, not realizing that the monstrous snake might appear. Usato asks Rose if she knew the monster. Rose explains that it was created by the Demon Lord's army. Siglis could not destroy it during the previous invasion, so it fled into the forest. However, Rose didn't anticipate that it would eliminate the Grand Grizzly Bear because they are strong enough that not even an entire unit of elite troops could defeat them. Usato can't believe that she wants a rookie like him to take on a task like that and thinks of her as a witch and a monster. Rose explains that she never expected him to win as the goal is to gain experience fighting something stronger than himself. But as things began to intrigue Usato, so she let him continue to see what would happen. Usato tells her that he almost lost his life, and so the cub came to defend him. Rose noticed that the cub was already showing affection for Usato. Ironically, the cub was alone because it had lost its parents. Rose decided to bring him along. Rose tells the cub to carry Usato, and he asks the cub if it's really alright to carry him. Usato is scared as Rose carries the bear cub and him over her shoulder. Rose then reveals that she heard what he said about her being an ogre. Usato agrees when Rose advises him not to think about sleeping at night. They head home, and Rose tells him he passed this time and qualified. Rose explains to him to stand beside her on the battlefield. He hasn't mastered the basics, but he has got what it takes. He has the ability to withstand the pain, the physical aptitude, and a strong mental state. The other two healers never earned the distinction, so she tells him that he should be proud. Usato gets shocked when she reveals that the demon army will be attacking soon. Elsewhere, the demon lord wonders how the preparation is going to invade the Linger Kingdom. Amilo, the commander of the Third Army, replies that their units have finished preparing for the battle, and they will soon begin their advance. Meanwhile, Rose tells Usato that he will join her on the front lines, where he will heal the injured soldiers. He will also be part of the vanguard. She says there are two more healers, but they have different duties. Usato doubts his ability to use healing magic like she does, but Rose says they still have some time left. She orders him to practice more before the battle, and Usato wonders if he can make it. Meanwhile, the demon lord assigns Amila to lead the army. He says that the Linger Kingdom has always escaped from their capture in the past. Amila swears to do her best to win the battle, and she leaves. As soon as she leaves, the demon doctor teases Amila for being nervous in front of the demon lord. Amila despises this geek and tells him to mind his own business. His name is Hyruluk, and he says that he has just finished the latest demon-made monster prototype. It's a snake with deadly poison and a huge body with razor-sharp fangs. It looks similar to the one Usato fought before. He named it Demon-Made Monster Prototype 72, Baljanak. Hyruluk's previous prototype escaped the last time they invaded the Linger Kingdom. It fled after being hurt by Siglis. Hyruluk assures that this prototype is much stronger, and Amila wishes that were true, since there are enemies stronger than Siglis in the Linger Kingdom. Hyruluk gets curious and asks if she's talking about the kidnappers. She confirms it and says those guys don't fight on the battlefield but save lives. They carry their wounded away before the enemy can notice and reduce their own casualties. Amila explains that their leader is a healer who runs across the front lines, healing people on the spot. We see that it's Rose, and Amila is enraged by her. This is because Rose is a skilled warrior, and she has a deep hatred for the Demon Lord. Amila swears to destroy her, but Hyruluk reminds her that she can't join the fight this time, since she is the commander. She knows that, so that's why she decides to send the immortal Mage of Darkness, the Black Knight. Back to Usato, we see that he finally gets a chance to relax in bed again. He goes to feed his little bear friend some fruit, and he also eats some. But the little cub just snatches Usato's fruit, and Usato sees that the rabbit is there too. He says this rabbit played with his pure and naive heart. The rabbit acts cute, and Usato almost falls for it. Still, he tries to refuse to be nice to the rabbit but cannot resist it and gives it some fruit. Rose shows up and is amused to learn that Usato named the bear Blurin. Blue for its color, re from the word grizzly. He is a total disaster as he believes the name is a good one. Rose says she notified the kingdom about the bear, so they have agreed to let them keep it. Rose will let it stay there but tells Blurin that he will have to work for his food. Blurin is scared of her and hides just like everyone else. Usato wonders what she will make him do. Moments later, we see Usato carrying Blurin. This will be his practice training, and Usato is to treat the bear as someone who needs to be saved. Rose orders him to start running, but it's easy for him. It's just like running with a little more weight, so as long as he controls his mana, he will be fine. Rose orders him to run faster since the injured won't survive if he wastes any time. Suddenly, Tong comes out of a bush and tries to punch him, but Usato avoids it. Another guy comes running towards him, but he dodges him. They run after him and tell him that Rose instructed them to simulate the battlefield. The others are ready to attack him as well, so they advise Usato to stay alert. 1 hour later, Usato is evading one of the guy's special stench water and dodging the strikes from a wooden sword of another guy. 3 hours later, he is jumping over logs, and 4 hours later he is careful not to step on the rabbit. Finally, Usato starts feeling weird and begins to question what is happening to him. He suddenly collapses, and Rose tells him that he has reached his limit of stamina on the battlefield. Humans feel fatigue from anxiety, fear, and frustration. That's why he lost his energy faster than usual. To improve, all he can do is adapt to it. Develop the mental strength and determination that never waver in the face of fear. Rose heals him but instructs him to spend the rest of the afternoon running around the castle town. Usato is shocked but follows her orders, and Rose reminds him to bring Blurin. As he runs in the streets, everyone is shocked to see a blue grizzly. Usato already knew this would happen. Despite Blurin being gentle, he is still a monster. Suddenly, the people start smiling as they realize that Usato is also part of the rescue squad. Blurin smells something and guides Uusato towards a fruit stall, but Uusato doesn't have any money. Uusato learns that this green fruit is called a peffel and asks the old lady why everyone is so relaxed when he is carrying a monster on his back. She tells him that it's because they recognize that Uusato is a part of the rescue squad by his outfit. They often see scary-looking men from the rescue team running all the time, so they are not easily frightened. This clears things up, since if those thugs' faces don't scare them, then nothing will. The kind lady gives them a pebble as a gift, so Blurin bites Usato's hand. When they walk away, a little girl called Imako asks the old lady if the boy belongs to the rescue squad. Usato then plans to go see his friends. The guy notices him and tries to call out to him, but he keeps getting behind and suddenly collapses on the ground. Usato finally realizes it and heals the guy. His name is Orga, and he says that he is one of the rescue team's healers. Orga is amazed to find out that Usato was summoned with the heroes by mistake, and says that he's been so occupied with training that he almost forgot himself. Orga thinks Uusato is amazing as he can handle Rose's training since it was too hard for him and his sister. His sister is the other healer and she is 5 years younger than him. They run a clinic in the castle and use healing magic to heal the people. Orga fainted earlier because he is awful at healing himself and much better at healing others. They are still part of the rescue team and serve under Captain Rose when needed. Uusato wonders what their roles are on the battlefield, so Orga says that Tong and the others bring the wounded soldiers to their place. That is where he and his sister heal them. He is shocked when Uusato tells him that Rose wants him on the front line, and Uusato doubts if he can really do that. Orga says that the knights and heroes who fight on the front line are in the most danger, so Uusato instantly thinks about his friends and gets worried. When they are wounded and abandoned, their only hope is to be rescued. The task is risky and tiring, but Rose only picks the ones she trusts completely. Before Orga returns, he tells Uusato not to be too harsh on Rose. He admits she is not the friendliest person, but he says that it's because she is not good at dealing with people. Uusato shocks him when he says that he has never despised Rose, even if he does have some issues with her. When Uusato goes, Orga feels glad that Rose has finally met someone. Suddenly, Orga's sister Uru shows up, and he tells her that he just encountered someone intriguing. They will see each other soon enough, and he is confident that Uru will get along with him. Meanwhile, Uusato reaches the castle and asks for permission to enter with Blurin. Uusato expresses his gratitude to the guard, and he wonders if he can bring a monster to the castle. The guard replies that Captain Rose has vouched for it, so he can go inside. Uusato runs through a crowd of people practicing swordsmanship and finds Suzunei. She's happy to see him but asks what the blue thing is on his back. Uusato tells her about everything, surviving in the forest filled with monsters, but she only cares if she can pet the bear. Uusato agrees and says he'll heal her if she gets hurt. Suzunei tries to pet Blurin, but he pushes her hand away. Uusato attempts to cheer her up by saying that Blurin is just shy and has her try saying his name. Suzunei kindly requests Blurin to be friends, but he just bites her hand instead. Uusato makes her feel worse this time and tells her that she might have a corrupted soul. Blurin lets go of Suzunei but then bites Usato's hand instead, and Suzunei asks if Uusato has a corrupted soul or something. Uusato notices the bruises on Suzunei's hand, and she says that it's because she trained hard. Uusato tells her that she should take care of her injuries and heals her hand. Suzunei is amazed by his healing magic and asks if Uusato came all the way here to visit her. Uusato says that he came to visit her and Kazuki, but that's clearly not the answer she hoped for. Suzunei tells him that Kazuki left the kingdom to fight monsters with Siglis and the others. Meanwhile, in the forest, Siglis tells Kazuki that the demon lord is coming soon, and they will bring stronger enemies this time. However, they have him and Suzunei on their side, so the soldiers are confident because they are heroes. Siglis is sure that they will win, but Kazuki looks worried. He pulls himself together and promises to do his best. Suddenly, they see a pack of wolves and get ready for battle. Back at the castle, Uusato is impressed and wonders if Kazuki will be alright. She replies that he'll be alright and when he comes back, it will be her turn to fight. Uusato knows that she will enjoy it, but she wants him to be worried about her. Uusato says he is, but Suzunei says he sounds too half-hearted, and they laugh together. Uusato decides to continue his training, and Suzunei wonders if Uusato noticed how close they have become. As Uusato starts running, he thinks about how everyone is getting ready for the war, so he wants to help them somehow. In his old world, he could only look up to people who could do things he couldn't. But he is not that powerless person anymore. That night, Rose is happy to hear that Usato's training is going well, but he says that he still needs to run more. Uusato stops her before she can leave, as he needs to talk about what she said before, to steel himself. He admits that he was scared out of his mind when he faced the snake monster, so he was shocked when she mentions the demon lord's army. He had no desire to go to war, but today he discovered a feeling even more powerful than fear. He understands now that he can fight, but he won't attack anyone. He promises to save whoever he can, and says that it's because he is a member of the rescue squad. That's exactly what Rose wanted to hear since they are heading out there to save lives. His role is to rescue the injured that the enemy is about to eliminate. It's also to keep those on the brink of death alive, even if it costs him his life. Rose tells him to keep saying those words since that's what the rescue squad should be. This was the first time Uusato truly felt like he belonged to the rescue squad. The next morning, Rose wakes up Uusato by dropping a heavy backpack on him and tells him the king orders him to join Suzunei's training outside the castle.
On their way, Uusato is confused about why he has to join Suzunei's training, and also reminds Rose that Kazuki had Siglis by his side. Rose tells him that he was supposed to go with Kazuki as well, but he was late from the forest. The king then sent another request, to which she couldn't refuse again. She promises Uusato that he will only be there as a backup healer, and she tells him to simply play his part for 3 days and come home. Suzunei is happy to see Uusato, but even happier to have Blurin with them. She thinks that he brought Blurin so they can get along better, but Uusato explains that he only brought him because Blurin hates everyone else. Suzunei then introduces him to Eruku, the knight, and Korin, the mage. Uusato knows this guy, and it turns out that he usually guards the castle gate. Rose explains to Suzunei that Usato's healing magic has its limits. He can only heal injuries and cure poison, but he cannot revive people if they are dead. She warns them not to rely on his magic too much, and Suzunei agrees that she understands. Rose is confident that she will be fine since Suzunei was trained by Siglis. Rose then tells Uusato that she has nothing to tell him. Uusato expected she wouldn't have anything nice to tell him anyway, so Rose lets them go away. Suzunei tells Uusato that she can feel that Rose is very strong, but Uusato doesn't get what she means. Suzunei just changes the topic, and they head out to start training. Meanwhile, at the castle, Celia is anxious when she sees Kazuki practicing his sword skills. She reminds him that he just returned from training and was supposed to rest, but he tells her that he had a good rest last night. Celia asks him if he's pushing himself too much, but he just flexes his muscles to show off that he's fine. She realizes she's holding his arm and gets shy, but tells him to look after himself and leave from there. Meanwhile, Uusato asks Suzunei about how tired Kazuki was after training, but Suzunei tells Uusato that Kazuki said to her the experience was worth it. He fought a lot of monsters inside the darkness of Linger, and that's exactly what they will be going to do now. Upon hearing that, Uusato wonders if Blurin misses his home. Suzunei wants to use the opportunity that Blurin is asleep by petting him, but Uusato slaps her hand. She gets confused but tries to pet Blurin again, but Uusato stops her hand. Suzunei dislikes how he is being rude to her and mentions he's smacking her hand and talking down to her as if he has turned into some kind of sadist. Blurin eventually wakes up, and Uusato tells him to walk by himself, but Blurin can barely walk as he's still very sleepy. Suzunei thinks this is her chance to get close to Blurin, so she suggests carrying him on her back. Uusato believes that's a bad idea, but Suzunei adores how fluffy Blurin's fur is. She falls flat on her face under the weight of the big cub. Uusato heals her and tells her not to get hurt herself outside of battle. Suddenly, Korin senses multiple presences ahead of them. Eruku asks her if they are monsters, but she denies it. Some bandits appear from the bushes annoyed to have been discovered. They were preparing an ambush, so they threaten them and ask to hand over their valuable things. Eruku declines to give them any goods, but the bandits mention that they have a huge advantage due to their big group. Uusato looks at the bandit group and thinks they are not intimidating at all. Uusato tells Suzunei that they have nothing to worry about, but she's just excited to see real bandits for the first time. The bandits are scared to see a blue bear, but one of them tells the others to take a better look as it's just a cub. These guys decide to capture it and skin it alive. Uusato gets mad after hearing them, but Suzunei immediately attacks one of the bandits with her lightning magic. Uusato is amazed that Suzunei used such a strong attack while sparing the guys' lives. Uusato is also shocked as she managed to control her power. She explains she practiced a lot so she can control it, and Uusato tells her to go wild. The bandits decide to dodge the magic attacks by getting close to her, but she defeated them all with a thunderbolt attack. Uusato mentions her as a human stun gun and a human electric eel, but she tells him she'll get mad if he doesn't stop mentioning her like that. Eruku joins the battle, but Korin detects something else, and they are very fast. Suddenly, a horde of fall boars passes them. Eruku is confused since they usually stay deeper in the forest. Uusato almost gets hit by the boars, but Blurin steps in to fend them away. Suzunei tries to attack the boars, but a boar comes toward her to attack. Uusato tries to protect her, but both of them are attacked by it and start falling deep into the forest. Usato uses his body to protect her from the fall. He uses his healing magic to heal himself while taking heavy hits from the tree branches. In the end, they end up falling into a river, but Suzunei is badly hurt. Usato recognizes that it is the same river he fell into before, and remembers that there is a waterfall ahead. He tells Suzunei to hold her breath. After falling from the waterfall, he passes out. After a few moments, Suzunei tries to wake him up, but sees that he is not moving, so she promises to protect him. She vows to return the favor to him for saving her life, but Usato wakes up and mentions that he's fine, and she is kind of embarrassing him. She gets embarrassed and pushes him away after realizing that he woke up. Usato tells her that he was just resting after saving her from drowning, but there is nothing to worry about. Usato uses his healing magic to heal the wound on her face, but she apologizes to him. He assures her that he is glad to have her by his side. Usato then reveals that Rose dumped him in this forest once to train before, and it's full of monsters that are far stronger than those fall boars. They realize that they barely have any food left in their backpacks. Suzunei suggests that they should focus on getting out of the forest if it's as dangerous as he claims. But Usato reminds her that it's almost nightfall and it might also start raining, so they need to find a safe place to stay for the night. Usato says to sleep on a tree branch like he did before, and asks Suzunei if she's fine with it. But Suzunei mentions that she has never climbed a tree before. She always dreamed of it, but she was never allowed to. Usato wonders if she comes from a rich family that sheltered her all her life. He finds a cave and decides that they'll shelter from the rain there. It's also way better than going deeper into the forest. Usato tells her to change her wet clothes, but she shyly tells him not to peek. Then she realizes that he hasn't even considered it. Later, Suzunei uses her lightning magic to catch some fish. She then uses it to light a fire, and Usato is grateful to have her around. Suzunei nervously sits away from Usato and notices that he is even more muscular than before. Suddenly, she looks up and spots some venom monkeys hanging from the trees. Usato says he has only read about them in books, and it's his first time seeing them in person. A little monkey gets down from the tree, and Suzunei finds the little monkey adorable. Usato tells her that they are harmless, but says not to touch them as they are poisonous. But Suzunei is already petting the baby monkey. She has decided that this is the risk she has to take for its cuteness, but the little monkey bites her. Suzunei proudly says that she was right, and there is nothing to be scared of, but she collapses down in an instant. Meanwhile, at the castle, the king gets informed by Korin's familiar that Usato and Suzunei are missing. After hearing that, Kazuki gets shocked and wants to know more about it. The king didn't want to reveal this to Kazuki, but Celia forced him to tell him the truth. Kazuki asks if a search party has been dispatched, but the king says that the search party will be dispatched tomorrow. However, Kazuki isn't happy with that, and decides to head out by himself to find them. But Rose blocks him and tells him to stop, saying that Suzunei and Usato are probably together. This means there is nothing to panic about, as Usato is her subordinate, and he won't die so easily. And if Usato is fine, then Suzunei will also be fine. Back in the forest, Usato's having a much easier time with Suzunei, as with her, surviving in the wilderness is a piece of cake. Suzunei gets annoyed being treated like she is some kind of camping equipment, but Usato is really grateful to her for being there with him. Usato suggests that they should sleep in turns and tells her to go first to sleep. But she declines it and tells Usato to sleep since he must be exhausted from using the healing magic. Without any hesitation, he just accepts the deal and goes to sleep. Suzunei looks at Usato and asks if he's asleep, but he says he is still awake. She asks him how he feels about being summoned to this world, and if he ever misses their old world. Usato admits that he does want to go home, but he also has a reason to stay in this world. Suzunei says that she doesn't want to go to their real world, but she wonders why Usato didn't ask. Usato says he already has an idea and guesses that it's because she likes this world more than theirs. Suzunei confirms that and reveals she has nothing to lose in their old world. She's willing to throw away her family, friends, or who she was before, just to stay in this isekai world. She has always dreamed of being free, and in this world, there is nothing holding her back. Suzunei would sacrifice anything for this freedom, and she is surprised when Usato says that sounds good to him. She expected him to be shocked by her true self, but Usato says that he was also tired of his ordinary life and his old self. Usato tells her when they first came here, he just wanted to not drag his two friends down. But now he is determined to protect Suzunei, Kazuki, and the people of the kingdom as a member of the rescue squad. Usato then asks Suzunei what about her. She replies that she also wants to protect this world as a hero. They agree to leave their past behind and focus on their present to save the kingdom together. Suzunei is happy for Uusato as much as he has grown since coming to this world. Uusato says she is much more relatable now as back in their world. He always thought of her as a flawless and perfect girl. Suzunei is shocked since he has been treating his perfect girl curtly. She doesn't mind this since she prefers to be close to him than respected from a distance. After hearing this, Uusato starts blushing and decides to sleep, but Suzunei jokes about him being flustered. She is happy that they had their little talk and tells him goodnight. The next morning, they walk through the forest to find a way back to the kingdom, and Uusato asks Suzunei to keep an eye out for monsters. Suddenly, they hear some noise and prepare for a fight, but it turns out to be Blurin, who jumps on top of Uusato for a hug. Aruku is with him, but he is tired and collapses on the ground. When he wakes up, Aruku tells them that they were searching the forest perimeter, but suddenly Blurin started to run off by himself. They followed him thinking the bear might lead them to Suzunei and Uusato. Suzunei says to Blurin that he did a good job as he must have picked up Usato's scent. Suddenly, Blurin smells something else and runs in a certain direction. He stops at a place and becomes sad, so Suzunei asks Uusato what this place is. To which Uusato explains that this was Blurin's home. He shares the sad story of how Blurin's parents were eliminated by a giant snake monster. Everyone starts to feel bad for Blurin, but Blurin comes to Uusato, which makes everyone confused. Uusato thinks Blurin wants to leave, and Suzunei is impressed that Blurin has made a choice. Blurin must realize that now he belongs with Uusato. Blurin starts walking away from there, and Suzunei tells Uusato it's time to go back home. And that's the end of the video. Please comment and let me know which anime recap you'd like to see next. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, goodbye.